quorum is present. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare recess at any time. Since we are working in a virtual format today, I would like to go over a few housekeeping items before I proceed. First, if you're experiencing connectivity issues, please make sure you or your staff contact our designated technical support so it can be resolved immediately. Members participating remotely must continue to use the video function for the duration of their participation in the hearing unless they experience connectivity issues or other technical problems that render the member unable to fully participate on camera. It is committee policy that members will remain muted when not recognized, just like turning your microphone on and off during a hearing in person. This is out of courtesy to all members in the committee and so that background noise does not interfere with another member. When you're recognized, you will need to unmute your microphone and pause for a couple of seconds before speaking so that we will be able to hear everything that you say. If you wish to be recognized, please raise your hand using the Zoom raise hand function, unmute your microphone, and ask to be recognized. In order to ensure that everything members say is captured in the live stream, I ask that members pause for 2 to 3 seconds before beginning to speak. If you have a document inserted into the record, please ask for unanimous consent to have your staff email the document to veteransaffairs.hearings@mail.house.gov. It will be uploaded to committee document repository. Without objection, members will be recognized in order of seniority for questioning witnesses. This makes it easier for me to make sure all members participating have an opportunity to be recognized. Does any member have any questions about the conduct of this hearing with members participating remotely? Seeing no questions, we will move on now to our opening statements. So I'd like to welcome everyone to the Subcommittee on Disability Assistance and Memorial Affairs. This is our first oversight hearing of 2022. First, I would like to recognize Representative Sherfilis McCormick, the newest member of the House Committee on Veterans Affairs. If she has joined us, or perhaps she will be able to join in a few minutes. There she is. So welcome. I'm the newest member to the Committee on Veterans Affairs. We're happy to have you joining us and joining our subcommittee.
Thank you.
So please join me in welcoming her to today's hearing. Today, we're taking an in-depth look at the quality of the VA's provision of benefits to survivors and dependents. Since a hearing of this nature and on this topic has not been held in more than a decade, this hearing will give us a chance to hear from the VA on improvements they have made, as well as highlight areas that need to be addressed. One of the VA's and Congress's most sacred duties is caring for those who serve and the military families left behind when a service member or veteran dies from injuries or illness related to military service. It is of utmost importance to this committee that the VA is doing everything in their power to ensure that survivors can easily access benefits, provide the necessary support to survivors, and deliver benefits in a manner that recognizes the great loss that has been suffered. I first want to commend the VA for looking to find ways to decrease the amount of time between application and grant or denial of dependency and indemnity compensation, or DIC, benefits for survivors. The initial reports on automation of DIC for survivors who are totally and permanently disabled is promising. While the VA's efforts are to be applauded, it's also important and necessary to ensure that the VA is conducting thorough quality reviews to prevent the false granting of benefits or giving false promises to surviving families that can cause distress and divert resources. There is more to be done to ensure when a survivor reaches out to the VA via telephone or online that these processes are easy to navigate and that they serve survivors. We were concerned to learn that a change made in 2020 allows all calls to be fielded through 9 call centers versus a single center that was focused on survivor benefits with specially trained operators that have the understanding of the range of benefits the survivor may be eligible for, without specialized training and experience with survivor benefits or dealing with those in the grief process being provided to the operators now responsible for these calls. We are also concerned of reports from VA employees that call center times are limited, regardless of the reason for the call. For example, when a survivor calls to first provide notice of death of a loved one, operators are given a short amount of time and must rush these individuals through the arbitrary processing of forms and questioning while they are still grieving. The VA websites can also be difficult to navigate, even for those familiar with the VA. For example, the main page of the VA website, va.gov, has no visible or clear link for survivors. The national call line, 1-800-MY-VA-411, does not have an option for survivors. Instead, survivors must know the exact name of the benefit they are looking for assistance on in order to get to the right operator. The lack of targeted outreach and education strategy for survivors, especially those in underserved populations, is startling. I was honestly shocked to find that the Office for Survivors and Assistance, an office created to serve as a resource regarding all benefits and services furnished by the department to survivors and dependents of deceased veterans and members of the armed forces, has a mere 2 employees. 2 employees serve a population of almost 450,000 survivors. According to the VA, OSA does not issue newsletters or targeted emails. This office answered 5,953 emails in the last fiscal year and participated in only 17 speaking or training engagements through FY 20 and 21. These numbers seem woefully low concerning the size of the population they serve, which I previously noted was 450,000 people. For surviving families, especially those in caregiving roles, the heartbreak of losing their loved ones is made more painful by a dramatic reduction in income and a loss of support services they were eligible for as VA caregivers. One caregiver turned survivor shared this quote, "I wish the VA would be more empathetic with me. I was a nothing after my husband passed, this after taking care of him mentally and physically for over 6 years. We would like to learn more about what work the VBA is doing to prepare these caregivers for the transition to survivor before the death of their loved one." In preparation for the hearing, the committee conducted a public survey to hear about survivors' experiences in accessing VA survivors' benefits. We received over 200 responses in less than 1 week. A majority of the commenters shared that they did not even know they were eligible for benefits unless they heard about it from another surviving spouse or by reading an article in the newspaper or online. One surviving spouse reported she had to submit her spouse's death certificate 3 times. And the VA employees she spoke with were very uncaring. She said no one should be treated this way after losing their veteran husband. Another shared, "I needed and tried to get a letter from the VA, and it was nearly impossible and very frustrating. I had to call several people in different cities and states before I was able to get the right person that could help me. If the system can be improved and be more user-friendly, it would be greatly appreciated by survivors like me." We have also heard from constituents in my district about challenges they face in accessing benefits. Since August 2019, Janet Resch, the surviving spouse of David Resch, a World War II and Korean War era veteran in Norfolk, Virginia, has experienced a multitude of issues when trying to access benefits she was entitled to. After multiple requests for supplemental documents, she was granted entitlement to aid in attendance. She was then required to fax even more documentation to clarify documents that were previously submitted, after which she received a letter saying that since the requested documents were not submitted, the VA denied her claim. Her son called and confirmed the documents were received in the appropriate time frame, which 2 VA employees confirmed they had received and promised to follow up. The claim has now been closed, and the family was told their only option is to appeal the claim. The appeals process means she may now wait years to receive an answer. This woman needs assistance now and has to continue to wait for this desperately needed assistance. The VA can do better than this when caring for families, especially after the loss of a veteran. We are holding today's hearing to inform the members of this committee and the American people about how the VA plans to develop and implement a robust, generationally appropriate survivor benefit outreach and education strategy for survivors to prevent financial predators from preying on this vulnerable population. How the VBA will better monitor the provision of benefits and services to survivors and dependents to ensure it meets their unique needs, and how they plan to simplify and improve the process for applying for benefits. What changes the VA will make to ensure surviving families have robust support. And additionally, we look forward to hearing from the VSOs on the role they play in supporting survivors. Over the next 30 years, the total veteran population is projected to steadily decrease. On top of ensuring those in their care are receiving helpful, compassionate service, we must make sure the VA is ready for this increase in eligible survivors. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses today and appreciate your candor and your feedback as we look for ways to meet the needs of survivors and dependents. With that, I'd like to recognize Ranking Member Nels for his opening comments. Mr. Nels.
Thank you, Chair Loria. Very well said. I am excited to take a fresh look at VA's process for providing benefits to survivors and dependents. And I also want to thank our witnesses, and many of whom are survivors themselves. So you represent the sacrifices made by thousands of families in this country. I appreciate your advocacy on behalf of your fellow survivors. When a service member steps up to defend our country, their family obviously is also affected. The husbands, the wives, the children who represent our military families may bear the brunt of this stress and anxiety when they leave home. And upon their return, some service members face life-altering injuries. Other veterans return home and live a normal for a time until they develop a seriously disabling or terminal condition. And in some tragic instances, our beloved service members come home draped in the American flag or not at all. In all of these instances, the lives of their family are changed forever. Losing a spouse or parent is a devastating experience. However, families not only have to deal with losing a pillar in their life, they must also realize they have to adjust to substantially reduced income, re-enter the workforce after a long absence, and navigate a federal benefit system that can be confusing even for experts. On top of that, I have heard concerns that survivors lack essential information on what VA benefits they might qualify for. It may be difficult to discuss how to carry on after the death of a loved one, and the VA bears responsibility to ensuring that survivors are aware of these benefits. VA can also help make these conversations easier. They must be made easier. The VA is already working hard in this area, and I recognize that many VA employees are survivors themselves. Therefore, I'm looking forward to learning how VA's Office of Survivor Assistance is expanding outreach and access to tools that can help with these tough conversations. I would also like for VA to address allegations from survivors that the VA's National Call Center can often be impersonal, sporadic, and calls are never followed up upon. It is unacceptable that spouses are not getting the help they need from resources such as the call center. It is also outrageous that upon the death of a veteran, many spouses report having to jump through hoops to prove their marriage to the veteran, even though VA can already verify this by simply looking into the veteran's claim file. During this stressful period of life, the spouse should not bear the burden of proof if VA already has a copy of their marriage certificate. And I believe this is common sense. Furthermore, for spouses whose service member was killed in action, my staff have heard that the process at VA is not always as clear as it may seem. While these spouses have a DOD assigned casualty assistance officer, I was one at one point in time, or a CAO, to help them transition during this difficult time. No such role exists at VA. I'm interested in discussing what it would look like to establish a similar role to the CAO at the VA, who is responsible for assisting all survivors. Finally, although they are not present at this hearing, I would also like to acknowledge efforts at NCA to make families aware of burial benefits and establish pre-need eligibility for burial in a national cemetery. Again, I would like to thank all of our witnesses for being here today. I believe this hearing will help inform what changes need to be made to this process. With that, Chair Luria, I yield back the balance of my time.
Well, thank you, Ranking Member Nels. For today's hearing, we have two panels. With us today for panel one, we have witnesses to speak about how VA supports survivors in accessing benefits. From the Department of Veterans Affairs, we have Ms. Cheryl Rawls, Executive Director, Office of Outreach, Transition and Economic Development Service, Veterans Benefits Administration. So thank you, Ms. Rawls, for joining us again. And Dr. Nelijah Carter, Executive Director, Pension and Fiduciary Service, Veterans Benefits Administration. Just wanted to remind our witnesses again to pause for 2 or 3 seconds before you start speaking so that we can capture all of your remarks. And your written statements will be included in the hearing record without objection. So I would like to recognize Ms. Rawls to start for 5 minutes.
Hello, Chairwoman Loria, Ranking Member Nels, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today about the effectiveness of services for veterans, survivors, at the Department of Veterans Affairs. Accompanying me today is Dr. Elijah Carter, Executive Director of the Veterans Benefits Administration's Pension and Fiduciary Service. Before I talk about the programs and tools VA has in place to honor the survivors of our nation's veterans, I would like to first express my appreciation for your continued support of our veterans, their families, caregivers, and survivors. Secretary McDonough has defined his 4 guiding principles as advocacy, access, outcome, and excellence to be the foundation of serving veterans and their families. This sacred mission is both personal and professional for me, and it remains the honor of my lifetime to serve veterans, their families, caregivers, and survivors. VA's commitment to serving this population starts as our service members are transitioning out of the military. VA, in partnership with the Department of Defense and other agencies, begin educating and supporting service members and their families prior to their transition into civilian life. No later than a year prior to separation or retirement, during the Transition Assistance Program VA Day, service members and their families are provided information on VA benefits and services to ease their transition from military to civilian life. The TAP training covers specific VA programs designed to support their loved ones, such as VA's life insurance, burial and memorial benefits programs, survivor education, and disability compensation and pension benefits for survivors. In the event of a service member's or veteran's passing, VBA plays a vital role in supporting their survivors. In October of 2008, VA established the Office of Survivor Assistance to serve as a resource regarding all benefits and services offered by the department to survivors and dependents of deceased veterans and members of the armed forces. In fiscal year 2021, the office assisted over 5,000 survivors that contacted them through their dedicated email or phone number. Additionally, the office provided condolence letters to the surviving members of over 1,100 service members who died on active duty. In fiscal year 2020, the office collaborated with VA's Veterans Experience Office to create a survivor's journey map. The journey map describes the end-to-end survivor experience throughout major steps in their experience with VA, including the emotions they may experience, the people they encounter, the moments that bring them joy, and the moments they are faced with challenges. The purpose of the journey map is to illustrate the survivor experience from the survivor's perspective, so VA may better meet the needs and ensure positive experiences. Using this journey map as a guide, VA is working to plan for and design better experiences for our veterans survivors. VBA's Pension and Fiduciary Service also has a vital role in assisting survivors and may provide monetary benefits in the form of non-service connected survivors pension, dependency and indemnity compensation, and burial allowance. When a service member passes while in service, VA partners with the DoD to provide outreach, guidance, and claims assistance support. Each regional office has a casualty assistance coordinator that provides outreach to the surviving family and works with the DoD to plan when VA should contact the family. Upon receipt of the report of casualty from DoD, VA immediately begins to process the claim for DIC and has dedicated staff located at the Philadelphia VA regional office. Lastly, VA continues to seek ways to improve and expand the use of automation in its benefits delivery to provide faster, better service to survivors. In April of 2021, VA completed its initial delivery of claims automation, which provided the ability to process DIC and burial claims end to end. In fiscal year 2020, it took VA over 100 days to complete a claim for DIC. With automation, it is now taking VA only 50 days on average to complete DIC claims. Similarly, VA is now completing burial claims in an average of 34 days, 66 days fewer than fiscal year 2020, getting those much needed benefits to survivors more quickly. VA continue to work to achieve our common goal of improving benefits delivery to survivors of deceased veterans and members of the armed forces. Chairwoman Loria, Ranking Member Nels, this concludes my testimony. I am happy to respond to any questions you or the committee may have.
Well, thank you, Ms. Rawls. And we'll now move into questions. I will recognize myself first for 5 minutes, and just a quick reminder, everyone please pause for about 2 seconds after you unmute. So Ms. Rawls, in preparation for the hearing, as I mentioned earlier, the House Veterans Affairs Committee sent out a survey to collect the experiences of survivors when they were accessing benefits at the Department of Veterans Affairs. And the overwhelming response was confusion about who's eligible, what's available, uncertainty where to go for answers. Some survivors have even told us that they feel like second-class citizens when interacting with the VA. And I know this is not at all the way that you or your staff or anyone at the VA wants for a veteran or their survivor or caregiver to feel through the process of a claim. And can you talk a little bit about specific outreach efforts, how much of the VBA's budget is spent on outreach to specifically target these survivors so they can know and understand better what benefits they're eligible for, and what OTED efforts are solely focused on survivors?
And absolutely, ma'am, and thank you very much for that question. And so I want to let you and the committee know that the Office of Survivor Assistance is under the OTED umbrella, but it is just one of the tools that we have. We also have our outreach office, which sets up standards and guidelines for the regional offices to be able to implement their casualty assistance coordinator duties. Then when we start talking about specific outreach, I will tell you in 2020, we did implement a campaign to reach out to this population because we knew that they were experiencing I would say, a decreased emphasis on getting that information. But this campaign had many pieces to it. We actually put out a press release. We put some articles out there for AARP. We did some training for our elderly coordinators as well as our casualty assistant coordinators. And we worked across the administration, which included having information from the Office of Survivor Assistance to help guide us. And so we know that we have some work to do in continuing those efforts. And that's why we have really commissioned the Veterans Experience Office in doing that journey map so it can help guide us to do those unique things that are necessary, ma'am. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And I was curious, do you have anything in place to measure the effectiveness of these things that you're doing so that you can understand which of them are effective, which ones are reaching veterans, which ones may need to be expanded?
So great point, ma'am. We don't have a tool in place to measure the effectiveness of outreach. That has certainly been one of the items that we have been in constant communication with our Veterans Experience Office. Just getting the journey map done has been one thing, but we know that we need to be able to hear from that population once we've done outreach. And we are currently in the process of setting up a mechanism to be able to get that feedback that will give us, very immediate information as to the trust, as to how much service we've provided, and as to areas that we need to continue to focus on. Thank you.
Thank you. And that journey map, is that a public document that everyone can see? And if not, is it something you can provide to the committee so we can understand all of it? It sounds like a flow chart that would be helpful for us to have that and understand, all the steps that you're working on.
So absolutely, ma'am. There is a public facing piece to it, and we'll be happy to get that to the committee now.
Well, thank you. And, the last part, you talked about the automation of DIC benefits, and, that is encouraging to know that the time has, sped up quite a bit with processing those. Was curious in a question about accuracy. So of the automated DIC benefit decisions, how many of those later did you find were inaccurate or potentially like overpayments or granting benefits to people who, actually ultimately were not entitled to that? Is there a quality mechanism, and like what's the error rate in the automated process as compared to the manual process you were using before?
Absolutely, ma'am. All of the DIC claims are a part of our current quality review for the regional offices. And I'd like to call on my colleague, Dr. Carter, to expound a little bit more on that process and any of findings or information he can share. Dr. Carter?
Thank you and good afternoon. To Ms. Ross's point, in terms of quality of our automated claims, we have stood up 2 teams that focus strictly on quality assurance of automated pension claims. The team frequently conducts quality reviews in every part of the automation process, and we use trends in the data to submit system change requests to make the automation better. To date, we have conducted numerous quality reviews, and our quality as it stands now is comparable with what manual claims processing is, and it's over 94% as of December of this year or fiscal year.
Okay, thank you for that. And I have gone past my time. So I'll now recognize Mr. Nels for 6 minutes or whatever you desire with the witnesses for your questions.
No, Chairwoman Lori, you did a great job asking questions with Ms. Rawls. I will hold and wait till Dr. Carter. So I have no questions right now.
Okay, thank you. And I'll now recognize the next member, Mr. Trone, for 5 minutes. Okay.
Hi, Chairwoman. We had a second, had to get our voice on there. Thank you for holding this hearing, Chair Loria. We've all said many, many times, we must do right by our veterans and their families. It's a straightforward mission, but we must commit to it every day. Ms. Rawls, I'm interested in discussing barriers to accessing benefits, and paperwork is a natural place to start. There's nothing worse than paperwork. So please tell us, how does the VBA work with the vets to ensure all the paperwork that might be needed for their families to receive their benefits prior to their death is already in the system and ready to go?
Thank you very much, sir, for that question. And so, as I mentioned, we do have a fairly integrated process. And the first piece I'll talk about is for those in-service deaths. Those in-service deaths, we have a partnership with DOD. And so when DOD provides us that information, they may help the survivor complete that paperwork. But they're also going to connect with the regional office casualty assistance coordinator, and that casualty assistance coordinator for those individuals will reach out to them, and they may meet with them as many times as they need to meet with them. Now, when we have those who are on our rolls who are receiving benefits, once we are informed of the first notice of death, we do send out information for them. And when they contact us, either via that 1-800 number or the regional office, there is time spent to assist them helping to complete that. The last thing I'd like to say is that we do work with our veteran service officers, our county veteran service officers, our state directors. We provide updates and training frequently. We talk to them about what the needs are, and we have this strong collaboration that we know we will need to continue to build on. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I also sit on the Veterans Subcommittee on Appropriations. So if you folks need more funding for better systems, we'd like to know. We need to innovate, get rid of as much paperwork, as much bureaucracy as possible, to serve our veterans and our families better and faster. So thanks for your response. My next question is, what impact does living abroad have on accessing survivor benefits?
Thank you very much for that question, sir. We like to say that there is no impact in living abroad. And let me tell you some of the things that we have currently in place. So while all our veterans have access via any electronic communications, they can file those claims. We do have our overseas military service coordinators that are located in various countries that are able to assist. And if they are in an area where we have our benefits delivery and discharge employees, they will also assist them. But one of the unique things that we have done is implemented a partnership with the State Department. And so we do have this alliance in where they are force multipliers for us. It's an interagency agreement. And so we provide training to State Department personnel so they can give information to our veterans that are living abroad. Thank you very much, sir.
And other underserved populations, what's your plan to attack those?
Thank you very much for that question. Our underserved populations, right now, we are continuing to work, say, for instance, with our tribal nations to meet those needs and to ensure that we go out and we do the claims clinics as necessary or as needed. We have a project now where we are aligning which nations would like for VA to come out and do those claims clinics. We also work to do community veterans engagement boards in those areas. We have completed women veterans journey maps to ensure that we are capturing our right personas and what we need to do for populations. And so we do align ourselves for specific populations, but generally, sir, we know that veterans are not necessarily uniquely identified with any one person. I'm a Black female veteran, and so I get information that involves me from various modalities. Thank you, sir.
Excellent. Thank you. I yield back, Chairwoman.
Thank you, Mr. Tronan. And I understand Mr. Nellis would like to ask a round of questions.
All right, thank you, Chair Loria. And Dr. Carter, we're going to hear testimony from Gold Star wives, and they discuss the struggles survivors of veterans who died by suicide face when applying for benefits. And what training does the VA provide to employees on processing DIC claims when the survivor states that the veteran's death by suicide was service-connected?
Thank you for that question, sir. VBA is definitely committed to providing its employees with training and education they need to provide outstanding service to all veterans, survivors, and other claimants in regards to however they may pass away. VBA has a standard employee training that is provided to all new claims processors. And when they become journey level employees, they have annual refresher or when we have changes in policy and procedures, we update training, provide that as well. And then they have a 40-hour training requirement each year while they're a VA employee.
Well, thank you. That's good news, because obviously that would be very, very troubling for a survivor to try to have to work through this process, knowing that her loved one would have died as a result of suicide. That's a very sensitive issue, and we need to make sure that the individuals on the other end of the line at the VA are taking those things under consideration when dealing with that survivor. My other question related is maybe to automation, and explain to me how automation has improved the processing of survivor claims.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that question as well. We attribute much of our success in completing burial and DIC claims timely to our initial phases of automation. And yeah, I'm proud to share that as of December 2021, our average days to complete these claims are well under 60 days, as Ms. Rawls stated in her opening statement. As of FY21, our automation capability has completed over 48,000 burial claims, which were 57% of all burial claims.
think we lost him.
Is Mr. Carter, can you hear us? I believe we might have lost you.
That's okay, Chairwoman. I think he's answered my questions, but thank you. I yield back.
Well, thank you, and we can allow him to follow up if there's any additional information once he is able to come back on. I will now yield 5 minutes to Mr. Ruiz, and just for everyone's situational awareness, for the people who are currently on right now with their cameras on, it will be Mr. Ruiz, Mr. Moore, Ms. Capter, and Ms. Miller-Meeks.
Thank you very much. Today's discussion is a very, very vital one. How do we help families access the benefits they need to care for themselves and others left behind after the loss of a loved one? I have long heard from my constituents about the difficulty of navigating the current system. Right now, I have more than a dozen cases open for constituents who have tried to figure it out on their own and gave up because they didn't know where to even begin. So clearly, the current system is not working. It's difficult, it's cumbersome, and it's not friendly to the constituent. It is long overdue that we examine the process from how surviving families are notified about their benefits all the way through how the benefits are delivered. We need to know where the roadblocks are occurring so we can knock them down and make it easier for all surviving families to get the help they need. The last thing a person should have to worry about while mourning the loss of their loved one is how to access help that is meant for them. My question is for Ms. Rawls. Are survivor resources provided in multiple languages for survivors whose first language may not be English?
Thank you very much for that question, sir. Our benefits guide is provided in Spanish, and so we can request that, and we can get that out as people come in and they want that information. We do have.
Excuse me. Let me just interrupt
Yes,
there.
sir.
So it's upon request.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So our people who provide the benefits booklets to we say the regional offices, they can request them. So when people come in to the regional offices, they will have them available to hand out to them, as well as our veteran service organizations. They can request the benefits guides in Spanish, so they can hand them out also, sir.
Okay.
Mhm.
And are they in any website? Do they have an option to click on, Español, se habla español on the website, or any kind of interpretation services if they call in for any assistance?
So absolutely, if they call in, we do have Spanish speaking call center employees that they can get assistance with. And we are continuing to work to ensure that all of our information in our websites, that the capability that you just mentioned, sir, is available.
Okay. And of course, there are multiple languages spoken in our country, and we have service members and spouses who speak multiple languages at different levels of proficiency in speaking English or not. And so it's very important that we expand and make that, eliminate that barrier to access to the information as well. One of the things that we've really highlighted during this pandemic is the collaboration with local organizations to do the outreach into communities, to educate, to train, to provide testing, masks, as well as the vaccination campaign. So what role do you see local organizations who are from and local individuals who don't necessarily work for the VA, but can be great partners in reaching out for the survivors' benefits and collaborating with community organizations to get the benefits where they're needed in the easiest fashion?
Excellent question, sir. Just last year, OTED began working to establish relationships with what we will call our non-traditional veteran service organizations and community organizations. And so one of the first things we would say for people is to reach out to us, because we will do a 1 to 2 hour seminar or symposium, depending upon what those needs are. As far as the community is concerned, we continue to partner with the county veteran service officers who are very familiar with the organizations that are in that area. We provide consistent training, and we do have meetings. And the last thing I'll say is that our regional offices, they are in the community. So they are working with the local individuals that are on ground there, and they'll be able to provide them information.
Do you have a program that works in collaboration with the funeral homes? So that way they know when to refer survivors to their local VSOs?
So we do provide information to the funeral home directors, but I will tell you that is an area that we can certainly tighten up and meet with them more consistently. Many times they do, have these conferences. It would be great for us to figure that out and be able to become speakers at those conferences also. Yes, sir.
Thank you. I yield back my time.
Thank you, Mr. Ruiz. I will now recognize Mr. Moore for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Ms. Rawls, does the VBA have plans in this year to increase the amount of in-person outreach events conducted for members of the surviving community?
And absolutely, sir. Last year, we did almost 125 combined activities. That was between the Office of Outreach as well as the Office of Survivor Assistance. This year, the office has already completed well over 100 engagements. And we are continuing, to ensure that we're working with either our women's veterans coordinators, our elderly coordinators, our state directors. So we have a presence in activities so we can get to that population.
Gotcha. So thank you. Thank you. Also, a real quick question. Many of the individuals I spoke with prior to the hearing were unaware that the materials the VA had already developed to aid veterans and their spouses, such as Planning My Legacy Toolkit. How is VA working to push these tools out to the populations who need them?
Thank you very much for that question, sir. And one of the things that we did during our campaign for outreach year before last, when we pushed information out through our Gov Delivery to our veterans, we gave them the information to contact the VA to get acquainted with us in this process. In addition to that, we've continuing to work with our CVSOs and our VSOs, giving them those products to make sure that they have them. And lastly, we not only have partnering with VE, but we do have quarterly meetings where we bring in an integrated community around survivors that will help to amplify that message. So we have a number of different activities that we cycle through, sir.
Okay, thank you. And with that, Madam Chair, I'll yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. I will now recognize Dr. Miller Meeks for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank all of our witnesses for being here today. And I think, Dr. Carter, you were going to expand your answer on the automation. And since I was going to ask a similar question, I'm going to give you an opportunity to finish your statement when you froze, if you want to finish your statement.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And to finish my statement, further, just to enhance our automation capabilities, VBA is seeking ways to further expand our pension automation capabilities, and that's through acquisitions, information technology, and that automated claims processing allows VA to provide quicker and more accurate decisions than traditional manual claims processing. We're generally able to provide a decision on those burial and DIC claims within hours as opposed to months that it would normally take. So that concludes my answer for the previous question. Thank you.
You're so welcome. And to either of our witnesses, when was the last time that the burial allowance for a non-service connected death was raised? So my father's, I'm military, my father was career military, my uncle, my brother. So I've had a number of veterans related deaths in my family and burials. And it seems like it has been $300 for the burial allowance for, well over 20 years that I know. So how long has it been at that level? Does anybody know?
So, I have probably the same recollection that you have. It's been a while, ma'am, since we've raised that, but I do want to call on Dr. Carter to see if he has some more recent information.
Yes, ma'am, I do. And it's set to raise January 5th of 2023, and that's per Public Law 116315.
And what will the amount be?
I believe it's 831, but we can take that back for record and
But
provide.
that would be for a VA death, not a non-service connected death.
That's for a non-service connected death. Yes, ma'am.
So it's going to go from 300 to 831.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. We might want some clarification on that, so I apologize. That just seems a big jump. And then I live in a rural area, so the majority of my district is rural. I have urban areas, and I know that there are struggles. And let me also say that, yes, part of VBA's responsibility is outreach, but we have 99 counties in Iowa. Every county has a Board of Veterans Affairs, and part of their mission is to do outreach. So we're very active in our board. I was a commissioner on our Wapello County Board of Veterans Affairs, being a veteran myself. And so I think there's a joint partnership between, counties and state and the VBA in doing outreach and letting people know of their benefits. But I just wanted to, for Ms. Rawls, if you would be so kind as to, expand on some of the struggles that the VA is facing when conducting outreach to rural and tribal populations.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that question. We're continuing to work with our nations. As you know, the Secretary's Advisory Board for Native Americans was just stood up this year. I had a chance to go out and talk to them about our benefits. So we're continuing to make sure that we're working with the leadership of that entity, as well as empowering our regional office directors to have a consistent program of engagement to our nations that are within their catchment area. From the national perspective, we have our opportunities to do claims clinics. We're working through now what that list would look like. And we have, pivoted from the cause of the entire pandemic, what that has done for us. But we're also continuing to, plan as much as we can for the upcoming months, during this period of uncertainty for us.
Thank you so much. Madam Chair Lear, I yield back my time.
Well, thank you. And I did have another question, and this was specifically about the pre-need eligibility determination program, which is currently administered through the NCA, the National Cemetery Administration. And so there is a recognized value to this program for helping process the paperwork, but it's rare and unlikely that a veteran, and then in the case of a survivor, their family would actually interact with the National Cemetery Administration before the veteran passes away. So can you explain, does it make sense for this program to reside in the NCA, or would it make more sense for this to be handled through the VBA? Because there's more of a constant communication and reason for interaction with the veteran, while they're still living, and rather than after they're deceased and it's their family.
So thank you for that question. And it gives me an opportunity to talk about how outreach is stacked within VA. We do partner with NCA. So anytime that I'm going out to do symposium, any type of communication with any group, our information that is provided does cover all benefits from VHA, benefits from NCA. So we do have an opportunity to talk about that program and get that information out there, ma'am, to people. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And so I just, thinking in the age of data and automation, trying to understand the process of how this could be automated more and less of a burden on the veteran or the survivor themselves in order for these benefits to be issued to the family members who are deserving of them. And so I understand that the VBA receives information of a veteran who's deceased through the Social Security Administration. And then the Social Security Administration, I would assume, receives that information from the states. And kind of how does that flow of information work? I mean, obviously there's a time delay between someone who's deceased, the death certificate being issued, it being reported to Social Security Administration, then making it to the VA. Like, what's that timeline? And then once that notification happens, does the VA take any automatic action in order to ensure, one, that if the veteran was receiving benefits while living, that those would have to be terminated, but then if they're survivors, which I assume would also already be identified in the veteran's records, that they have, spouse, next of kin, children, like, what could be done to just smooth this process, like almost in an automated form once the notification of death was received by the VBA, without having to have so much interaction from the survivor themselves?
Thank you very much for that question, ma'am. That population that you are referring to that we receive the Social Security death match on are for those individuals that are on our rolls. Of the 20 million veterans, I guess we have a relationship VA of about 10 million, but there are a little less than 4 million that are on our rolls. So that Social Security death match, that's the match that gives us the check mark and it nudged in the trigger to provide that information to the survivors to include their estate of their information. I think you may have been also talking about those who are not on the rolls. How do they understand and get to the information that they need from VA in its totality, whether that's VA, VHA, NCA, or VBA? And that's where we rely heavily on, I would say, the experiences of others, our general information, all of the outreach campaigns that we put on. We ensure that we're covering survivor benefits, so people will know to contact us so we can get that information out there to them, ma'am. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate that insight. I don't know if any of my other colleagues would like to ask a second question. Mr. Moore, do you have any questions? Mr. Moore, I think you're speaking, but you're muted.
Sorry. No, ma'am, not at this time. I'm okay.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, both to Ms. Rawls and Dr. Carter for joining us again today. We appreciate when you are able to share information with the committee and really appreciate the work that you do on behalf of our veterans and their survivors as well. So we look forward to staying in touch on these topics, and that will conclude our first panel. So I'll give a second here as I introduce our second round of participants, if they can go ahead and turn on their cameras. So I would like to thank the veterans advocate groups who are with us today for the second panel. I'll read the names of the witnesses who are going to participate, as well as several groups who provided written statements for the record. We have Ms. Kelly Hruska, who's the Government Relations Director for the National Military Family Association. Thank you for joining us. We have Mrs. Ashleen Haycock-Lohman, who's the Deputy Director of Policy for the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors, better known as TAPS. Mr. Mark Walensky, the Director for Currently Serving Retired Affairs for the Military Officers Association of America, and Ms. Pamela Lorian, Member at Large with the Gold Star Wives of America. We also have received written statements for the record from the American Federation of Government Employees, the Paralyzed Veterans of America, the Disabled Veterans of America, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, the Minority Veterans of America, the Modern Military Association of America, the Vietnam Veterans of America, American Gold Star Mothers, Inc., and the Elizabeth Dole Foundation. And we'll enter those into the record, but I think you can see by the large number of statements that we've received from different veteran service organizations that this is a topic that is very important to our veteran and survivor community. So I will again remind our witnesses who've just now joined us on camera to pause for about 2 seconds after you unmute yourself before speaking. And also if you are not currently speaking, to please keep yourself muted. And your statements in full will be included in the hearing record for today. So I would now like to recognize Ms. Ruska for 5 minutes for your statement. Thank you.
Chairwoman Lauria, Ranking Member Nels, and distinguished members of the DAMA Subcommittee, the National Military Family Association would like to thank you for the opportunity to present testimony today on the effectiveness of services for survivors provided by the Department of Veterans Affairs. The VA provides surviving family members with an annual summary of benefits letter that indicates the amount of dependency and indemnity compensation, or DIC, the survivor should receive. Not only does the letter provide important information for the survivor, but the letter may be used in applying for benefits, such as housing entitlements, local property, or vehicle tax relief. This letter is an official record of the survivor's VA entitlement. We've heard from some surviving spouses that they don't receive this letter. The Veterans Benefit Administration must ensure that the summary of benefits letter is sent to all beneficiaries annually. Not only are all surviving families not receiving the summary of benefits letter, but the information included in the letter is broad and may not be relevant to surviving family members. For example, the VA benefits information doesn't provide an itemized list of compensation. The DIC is presented as a lump sum. If the surviving spouse is receiving an add-on to their DIC, that add-on is included with the DIC payment. The lack of itemization leaves many surviving spouses wondering if they're receiving all their benefits, and they may be unprepared when the temporary add-ons end without warning, such as the child allowances, aid in attendance, or housebound payments. Our office receives several phone calls a month from surviving spouses asking us to help verify they're getting their VA benefits. If the letter were more specific, surviving families wouldn't have to guess or rely on outside organizations for verification. The reverse side of the letter provides details on VA benefits for veterans and identifies wartime service periods, but not benefits for surviving family members. Why can't VBA print survivor-specific VA benefit information on the back of the summary of benefits, such as CHAMP VA, meds by mail, home loans, and education programs? This would be helpful to the surviving spouses that don't use or don't have access to online resources. We do appreciate the summary of benefits instructs the survivor to contact their state or local office of Veterans Affairs for information on state or local benefits for which the survivor may be eligible. States and local communities provide valuable resources and benefits to surviving families that are often overlooked. This is an excellent reminder. VBA has done a great job developing online resources for surviving family members. Families can access eligibility information for benefits and services, detailed instructions on how to apply, and applications can be submitted online. They've also developed FAQs for many of the programs so families can find answers to many of their questions before they apply for benefits. However, when considering how information is shared, it's important to keep in mind the needs of the population being served. Many of our older surviving spouses, 41% of surviving spouses are over age 75, may not use or have access to a computer. VA needs to meet surviving spouses where they are. The VA needs to deliver information in different ways for surviving spouses to get accurate information from trustworthy services. Dedicated phone lines and trusted individuals to review benefits and help in applying for those benefits would fill a deepening gap. It has been 7 years since the U.S. Supreme Court's decision declaring that same-sex couples possess a fundamental right to marry and require all 50 states to license marriage to same-sex couples. Formal recognition of marriage equality by the Supreme Court was an important first step, while achieving actual marriage equality requires careful implementation. After the decision, the VA updated its forms to reflect the change. Just as VA updated all forms that requested marital status and dependent information in order to clarify that same-sex married couples and their dependents are eligible for benefits, it is time to update the definition of surviving spouse in U.S. Code. Because formal marriage equality is now the law of the land, the statutes should be updated to reflect the change. Same-sex surviving spouses are entitled to the same survivor benefits as their opposite-sex counterparts, and this needs to be enshrined in law to provide assurance of this right and continued progress toward full marriage equality. Finally, the VA survivor's pension is paid to widows of veterans of armed conflicts who meet certain minimum income level and net worth requirements set by Congress. The current amount paid to eligible survivors is well below $12,880, the 2021 poverty level for one person. NMFA supports a legislative change to link death pension benefits to the federal poverty level and determined each year by the poverty level determined each year by the Department of Health and Human Services. Thank you for the opportunity to share our thoughts, and we stand by for questions.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments and insight. And I would now like to recognize Mrs. Haycock-Loman for 5 minutes for comments.
Thank you. Chairwoman Loria, Ranking Member Nels, and distinguished committee members, the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors thanks you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of all those who have lost a loved one to military service, regardless of the manner, place, or time of death. TAPS works every day to address survivors' immediate needs. Through our daily communications with survivors, we have learned that they generally have positive views and experiences of the Department of Veterans Affairs. Where survivors face the most challenges are in access to VA benefits and programs. Surviving spouses frequently share with TAPS their communication challenges in accessing VA's dependency and indemnity compensation. Each year, VA sends a letter asking survivors if they have remarried. Surviving spouses are required to send back the letter confirming their marital status. If VA does not receive the letter or it is incorrectly completed, DIC benefits are terminated. The VA does not consistently send letters to every surviving spouse, so they are not actively expecting to receive one. Surviving spouses also do not have an easy way to verify whether or not the VA received their return letters and are caught unaware when the DIC payments stop. Once VA turns off their benefits, it can take 2 to 4 months for VA to turn them back on, which can cause major financial issues for many surviving spouses whose only source of income are survivor benefits. TAPS recommends the VA take a similar approach to most healthcare companies and send out an annual letter that surviving spouses only need to return if they have remarried. The VA would no longer require surviving spouses with unchanged marital statuses to return the annual letters to ensure on-time payment of their benefits. When surviving children turn 18 years old but are still in high school, they are eligible to continue receiving DIC until they graduate. 6 months before a surviving child turns 18, VA sends them a form to complete. It can take 18 months for the VA to process these claims. The problem is that these cases are not included in the national work queue. Instead of being processed as supplemental claims that take 4 to 6 weeks to process, surviving 18-year-olds are told to initiate a new DIC claim in their own right. VBA's current recommendation is to design a new 21P-674 form catering specifically to DIC students turning 18 and communicate claims errors as learning opportunities in the field. While TAPS appreciates the VA's effort, we believe the solution is more of a Band-Aid than a long-term solution. Adding another similar form for survivors to complete will create confusion. The DoD experienced similar problems with executing benefits for child option SVP recipients. DFAS rolled out a new process in 2019 that is based on an honor system. It recognizes that the application and supporting documents required to process benefits are legally binding. Surviving families have repeatedly told us that navigating only one new form is easy and that electronic filing has prevented payment delays. TAPS highly recommends VA switch to a similar process. More than 450,000 surviving families receive DIC benefits from the VA. TAPS and the survivor community have supported increasing DIC for many years to provide parity with other federal programs. The Caring for Survivors Act will strengthen DIC, a critical VA benefit, and ensure financial security for surviving families. We urge passage this year. According to a TAPS 2020 survey, 55% of survivors coming to TAPS were caregivers for service members or veterans. Caregivers who become survivors are often ill-equipped to access and navigate support, resources, and services available through the VA. Caregiver survivors also find themselves fighting to establish service connection before or after the death, compounding a stressful caregiving and grieving process. After their loved one passes, caregiver survivors are challenged by understanding and executing wills, arranging funeral plans, and accessing and applying for benefits. They often fail to apply for or receive all eligible VA benefits, losing potential income or resources when bills are accumulating. Expenses are increasing, and finding appropriately compensated employment is difficult. Another priority for TAPS is allowing surviving spouses to retain benefits upon remarriage. A key provision is the removal of the hold themselves out to be married clause in federal statute. The language unduly penalizes surviving spouses and may cause them to lose their benefits. Many surviving spouses in long-term relationships live in fear of being investigated because someone notified the VA. This clause also defines marriage as between a man and a woman, counters the Supreme Court decision that legalized same-sex marriages, and does not align with the VA's inclusive efforts to support the LGBTQ survivors and veterans. TAPS appreciates the opportunity to testify today, and I look forward to answering any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Haycock-Blumen. I will now recognize Mr. Belinsky from MOA for 5 minutes.
Chairwoman Luria, Ranking Member Nels, and members of the subcommittee, on behalf of the Military Officers Association of America, thank you for the opportunity to share our views. As a veteran, military spouse, and son of a surviving spouse, I've witnessed these challenges firsthand. The VA mission famously includes care for the widow, yet many surviving spouses have never spoken to a VA representative, or worse, they've been told, "I'm sorry, I can't help you because you're not a veteran." Customer service improvements across the VA enterprise and survivor outreach can correct that messaging problem. We support the mission of the Office of Survivors Assistance. We urge Congress and the VA to invest in personnel and implement a no wrong door approach for survivors seeking help. Although the VA has developed a comprehensive website, not all surviving spouses are computer savvy or have internet access. The surviving spouse experience will always be difficult, but improved outreach and customer service can prevent additional stress. One surviving spouse shared the following: "It's almost like you become a non-person when your spouse dies. I still get mail for him, but I need my own ID number to respond. Why can't I pick up the phone and have the representative see my information? A surviving spouse is still a customer, and I know I'm not a veteran." When you call an automobile insurance company, the customer representative picks up the phone and immediately knows your name and history. In the digital era, large organizations manage customer information to resolve problems. The VA could learn from corporate America's customer relationship management platforms. The department's current system of managing information seems like separate stovepipes. This frustrates surviving spouses. Modernization is needed. My own mother also experienced this frustration. She spoke of her experience following my father's death. In her words, "I was treated at the VA Women's Center for 20 years, while he would go to the VA Medical Center. After he passed, I had a medical emergency and was taken to the Women's Center in an ambulance. All of my records were there, and my doctor knew me there. I was turned away and told they couldn't see me because I was not a veteran." Customer service for surviving spouses suffers when standard policy or procedures only reference the veteran. Congress has recently made strides in recognizing presented diseases that have resulted from toxic exposure. With this important progress, some surviving spouses have realized this exposure was likely the root cause of death for their veteran. A survivor explained, "With leukemia, we never thought for applying for disability until years after my husband's death. The shameful thing is that when I went to a VA office and asked about it, they said they couldn't help me because I wasn't a veteran and that my husband should have made a claim before he died. I was so intimidated, it took 5 years for me to reach out to a VSO and ask for help with the claim. Financial fears are also a common stress, on top of grief from the loss of their loved one. Many are worried they could lose their home. That fear is real, and survivors often know others from their military network who did lose their home. As one MOA survivor noted, "I'm always concerned I might end up under a bridge somewhere." In addition to financial fears, dependents are frustrated with understanding the difference between VA and DoD-run cemeteries. They struggle to understand proposed eligibility reductions at Arlington National Cemetery that could change plans for many elderly veterans and make most women veterans ineligible. In order to further support oversight for survivor and dependent outreach, MOA recommends that VA and Congress modernize customer service, properly resource the VA Inspector General to conduct assistance when the bureaucracy malfunctions, and expand survivor outreach and implement a no wrong door policy for survivors seeking assistance. MOA also recommends Congress enact the Military Retiree Survivor Comfort Act, Supporting Families of the Fallen Act, and the Caring for Survivor Act, and pass legislation to transform a VA-run cemetery into the next Arlington National Cemetery as it reaches capacity. Thank you for the opportunity to share MOA's review of the effectiveness of services for dependents and survivors. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Belinsky. Ms. Lorian, you are now recognized for 5 minutes.
Chair Loria and Ranking Member Niels and distinguished members of the Disability Assistance and Memorial Affairs Subcommittee, I am pleased to be here today to testify on behalf of Gold Star Wives of America Incorporated and to share our thoughts. Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. We saw your video a minute ago, but when you started speaking, I think you might have inadvertently turned it off.
I do apologize.
Great. Now we can see you and hear you.
Okay.
So please go ahead. Sorry about that.
I am pleased to be here today to testify on behalf of Gold Star Wives of America Incorporated and to share our thoughts and concerns regarding honoring our promise, reviewing the effectiveness of services for dependents and survivors. My name is Pamela Lorian, and I am the surviving spouse of Donald T. Lorian, who served as a Coast Guard corpsman between 1971 and 1975. He died due to service-connected causes in 2016. Many of our Gold Star members have become widowed after many years of being devoted caregivers to their veterans. Instead of receiving a knock at the door, they have lost their loved ones inch by inch and day by day. Service-connected deaths are not assigned a casualty assistance officer, but the death of a veteran has just as much, if not more, paperwork and red tape as an active duty death, and is just as deserving of having someone specifically available to help. While most manage to complete the paperwork to receive dependency and indemnity compensation, all too often they think that is where their benefits end. We speak to surviving spouses years later who had no idea that they qualified for CHAMP VA, home loans, or even an ID card. Information regarding benefits should be included in the annual compensation letter. We would be remiss if we did not mention how much an increase in DIC would benefit this population of constituents. It is often a shock for surviving spouse to find out that their household income is cut to less than half once the 100% disabled veteran has passed. In 2008, the VA created the Office of Survivors Assistance. Gold Star Wives was a strong advocate in this creation. To recognize that survivors have unique needs and should have their own department was a great first step. The burden of assistance should not be shouldered by VSOs or outside organizations, as they cannot assure the accuracy of information. My husband waited 6 years for his appeal hearing through the VA. Just weeks after his appeal hearing, he died and never saw those benefits. Without a good VSO by my side, I could have lost my benefits. I was fortunate that my VSO stood by me for another 2 years until my benefits were approved. However, my friend Liz was not so fortunate. When her husband died in 2012, both an attorney and a VSO told her she did not qualify for benefits. Elizabeth grew up and struggled for the next 6 years until she finally learned that she did indeed qualify. These are examples of two well-informed and intentioned VSOs doing the best they can to help surviving spouses. Some are better informed than others, and it can be the luck of the draw of who you find. When a veteran dies, the spouse should be contacted and sent a comprehensive booklet of what to do and what benefits are available. Once the spouse is approved for DIC, they should be contacted again to see if they need help with ID cards, medical benefits, home loans, etc. The state DOV should be utilized more heavily in helping survivor spouses with their benefits, both on the federal and the state level. As we know, benefits differ widely from state to state. To this day, I'm still learning my state benefits from Delaware. Reinstated surviving spouses are in an even more vulnerable situation. When DIC is terminated due to remarriage, that beneficiary should receive information for future reinstatement of benefits. Most who do are reinstated for DIC are not told that they now qualify for CHAMP VA, a military ID card, etc. Since DIC is auto-deposited, many surviving spouses do not realize they need to update their address. This results in returning the have you married questionnaire. Returning the questionnaire in a timely manner results in suspension of benefits causing financial hardship. The questionnaire should only be returned if the spouse has remarried. Otherwise, nothing needs to be done. We are told CHAMP VA is working on paperwork submitted in August of 2021, and this is February 2022. This lag time means those applying for CHAMP VA and those trying to make the switch from CHAMP VA to CHAMP VA for life are nervous about using medical services. They need to at least get an auto response with a receipt and assurance that if and when medical benefits are approved, that the medical will be retroactive to the application date. Surviving spouses who have had eligibility denied in the past need to be notified when a list of presumptives has been expanded. For example, we know some who have been denied in the past, but now would be approved due to the expansion of the list of presumptives for Agent Orange. Mental health is an issue shared by many surviving family members. Increasing funds for vet centers will increase the staff available to provide treatment. We have heard reports of surviving spouses who have had services suspended mid-treatment due to lack of available providers. We do appreciate all that the VA is doing for survivors. We encourage our members to go to the websites, the Facebook pages, and to keep themselves informed. And I thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I'm available to answer your questions.
Well, thank you. And thank you to all of our witnesses in this second panel for sharing your insights and the experiences with the veterans in your organizations and who you work with day in and day out. And I actually will, Ms. Lorian, start with you. I know you went last on the statements, but I'll go to you first on the questions. Because you mentioned that if you could create a casualty assistance officer, essentially similar to what is the experience for a family when a veteran dies while on active duty, but someone within the VA that could perform a similar role. Could you describe how you would envision that to work, what families of survivors could benefit from in a role like that within the VA?
I think probably that the point of contact, an initial point of contact, immediate point of contact upon notification of the veteran's death, the grief process for a widow when a spouse dies leaves that spouse with an enormous amount of paperwork, an enormous amount of emotional trauma, and financial trauma. So having that point of initial contact, assistance with paperwork, providing more information, follow up with that spouse to make sure that they have applied for that benefit. Did you know? And just gentle reminders that this is available to you so that they can move forward with their benefits.
Well, thank you. And I didn't know if Ms. Haycock-Bowman or any of the other witnesses would like to speak about perhaps the benefit of someone more closely aligned with what we're familiar with for active duty with the casualty assistance officer within the VA organization. And that initial contact does seem very important to me. And having been active duty myself and understand what the casualty assistance calls officer does, that there's one person that follows that person and that family through the whole process. But it seems like with the VA, you call a call center, like Mr. Belinsky was saying, you go through a whole process for them to look up your record and the person isn't familiar with it or familiar with the previous time you called. So Ms. Haycock-Bowman or any of the others witnesses, would you like to comment on that?
Sure. So in an ideal world, at least for TAPS, we would love to see expanded programming for the Office of Survivor Assistance. If a survivor calls and notifies the VA that their veteran has died, VA should immediately do a gentle handoff to OSA, and they can begin the process of supporting them through the benefits, making sure they're aware of all of the programs that are out there. But one, nobody does that. And two, nobody knows OSA exists. It's a program that's out there, and those of us who are down in the weeds in policy know it's there, but survivors don't know it exists. Unless you go down a rabbit hole of Googling and then you end up there on the website. But even then, it's not clear if you're eligible or where to begin contacting VA to get access there. I know with TAPS, we have MOUs with all of the service branches. So when a service member dies and the casualty assistance officer not only does the paperwork there, they also do a gentle handoff to TAPS to make sure that we're helping make sure the families are taken care of in the long term. And while we have an MOU with VA, that's not part of our relationship there. But yet again, our TAPS caseworkers are doing a lot of the heavy lifting for survivors' access to VA benefits.
Well, thank you. And Mr. Belinsky, you used this term "no wrong door." Sounds sort of like what the others are talking about, that really whatever the touch point is where a surviving spouse or family member connects with the VA, there should be no wrong door to get them to essentially the place they need to be able to understand what those benefits are and how they apply for them. Can you explain a little bit, what you envisioned when you use that comment?
Absolutely. So a no wrong door type policy is absolutely associated with authorities or departments within the VA to share information. So if you can envision a call center where there is a visibility tool for customer relations management, and a representative picks up the phone and can see that the surviving spouse called last week and there was a question and there was a query, and the representative can immediately pick up the phone and say, "Oh, I see you called last week. Let me check and give you an update on the status of your question." Those are all modern expectations, and certainly increasing automation and computer availability and personnel training are all part of the equation with providing the authorities. But it's also a challenge of as an institution and across the enterprise being able to establish that policy to share information where you have so many who are guarding their small cherry bowl of information and don't necessarily want or have the authority to share.
Well, thank you. That's a new one, a cherry bowl instead of a rice bowl. Ms. Ruska, do you have anything to add on this particular topic from NMFA?
There are VSOs that do a particularly good job of helping surviving spouses. They tend to be, members, and I believe PVA is actually one of the organizations that I'm aware of. I know they submitted testimony for the record, whereas when one of their members passes away, they reach out to the surviving spouse and serve that CAICO-like function. with them. And so I would encourage you to reach out to some of these VSOs and talk with them and find out about some of the best practices they use. But I also agree that the Office of Survivor Assistance would be a good place to start in terms of being the center point for that outreach.
Well, thank you. And I will now turn to my colleague, Ranking Member Nels.
Thank you.
Ask
Thank you,
questions of our
Chairwoman.
panel.
Thank you so much. Kelly, please detail why you believe it is unnecessary for the VA to send spouses the relocation letter once a survivor reaches age 55 or 57, dependent on that benefit.
Sir, they don't, by law, surviving spouses can marry after the age of 57, now 55. The law just changed in January of 2021. So once surviving spouses are allowed to remarry, there's no reason to recertify that they're unmarried if they can retain their benefits.
Can't disagree.
Does that
with
answer your?
Yeah, that's fine. And let me see, I think, Pamela, please elaborate on the challenges survivors face when applying for benefits if the veteran, died by suicide, and how do you think that the VA could improve the way it handles these claims?
Thank you for your question. The VA was very responsive to me in my particular case, although it took a long period of time, making sure that there's a better turnover for these spouses, reaching out to these spouses, I think, and letting the spouse know that there is a casualty assistance officer that's available if they reach out to that casualty assistance officer at this time. At this point in time, there is no outreach. And so I think it would be better if the casualty assistance officer would outreach to the surviving spouse. The VA, especially with burials at a VA cemetery, oftentimes the VSOs are readily available. Rural areas, I find, are more difficult, and not many spouses even know that they are eligible for continued benefits at all. So just getting that information to the spouse is really important.
And I couldn't agree with you more. Ms. Lohman, how can the VA improve training on claims for DIC when the veteran passed away from COVID?
So a large part of it is codifying the statute that's there so that going forward, it's not an issue. But making sure that the claims processors understand that just because the death certificate doesn't read exactly what contributed to COVID, that the survivor should still be eligible. So some of it comes down to educating the medical offices, but also ensuring that they're doing more robust training, because we are still seeing a large number of survivors whose veteran died from COVID, but also had a high-risk cancer or other illness that was service-connected.
Very well, thank you. Rep. Louie, I'll yield back.
Well, thank you, Mr. Nels. And I understand from my colleagues that there are no further questions for the panel, but we greatly appreciate you taking the time to join us today, and also for all of the VSOs who presented statements for the record and writing. It's very valuable information from our work. And we can see from today's discussion that the VA is doing a lot for our survivors and their families, but there's more that they could do. There's a way to update and really bring technology and into the 21st century. And as Mr. Belinsky said, sort of more of what expectation is of customer service. And then as well as what Ms. Lorian said specifically about, that continuity for a survivor and survivor's family, similar to what our active duty families have experienced through the CAECO program. So we thank you for your insight. And, another thing of importance to us is, in order to prevent financial predators from preying on this vulnerable population, as well as to ensure that their needs are met, Congress needs to know that the VA has a strategy and a well-developed plan going forward to better serve this population. as well as ensure that survivors are never treated like second-class citizens at the VA, that they receive the same care that their veteran spouse received. So I'd like to thank our witnesses for participating. I'm grateful for all of the information that you shared and appreciate your partnership with the VA. And I see Ms. Rawls joined us again on camera. So thank you as well for participating. Mr. Nels, I don't know if you'd like to make any closing remarks for our participants.
No, very well said, Chair Loria. Again, thank you all for being here. I think we all have one goal, one objective in mind, and that is to make sure that we do what we can for the surviving spouses, wives, anyone that is dealing with tragedy, making sure that the VA is aware that there are people that are struggling, going through a very difficult time, and we need to be empathetic to them and give them the time and the attention they damn well deserve. And I think we've accomplished something here today, so thank you all.
Well, thank you, Mr. Nels, and I also see Dr. Carter has joined us back again on the screen. Thank you, Dr. Carter, for your work and for joining the hearing today. So without objection, that concludes today's hearing. All members will have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material. So the hearing is now adjourned, and thank you again.